Yes, Boxing Nights. We have a lot to get through, so let's get on with this review. Chris Dixon, the editor, discusses the up-and-coming Kell Brook and Matthew Hatton fight tomorrow. And he's saying how Matthew Hatton is such an underappreciated contender. Well, I disagree. The guy's got no punching power, no obvious skill. He's quite a physically fit boy. But I don't see this fight as a big fight for Kell Brook. I just don't see it. I mean, the only way Hatton has a chance of going the distance is if he stays on the move. And if he holds and clutches, and them kind of tactics. I mean, didn't Hatton, he drew with Lovamore Endo, which tells you that he really lost the fight. And every big test he's had so far, he's came up short. You know what I mean? I just see Kell's offense and his upper body movement and everything just a league above Hatton's. I just don't see how it's been billed as a big fight out of here, but whatever. You know what I mean? Dixon also talks about tomorrow's matchup between Matthew Macklin and Sergio Martinez. And I really think it's a 50-50 fight, actually. I really do. But obviously, Martinez will start the favourite and he'll be expected to win. But I will not be shocked if Macklin actually pulls an upset off. I just won't be. He also talks about the Salido-Lopez fight and he's nominating it as a contender for Fight of the Year. He talks about Ricky Burns' defence of his title last week and a possible fight in Airdrie against Kevin Mitchell. And they're discussing whether Kevin Mitchell is really a big name in the sport. They're also throwing Burns' name in the hat with types like Antonio DeMarco, Miguel Vasquez, Brandon Rios, and Robert Guerrero. This week they have a guest columnist called Steve Kim, and he talks about the Salido and Lopez fight and how the Puerto Ricans were expecting Juan Ma to be a heir to the Puerto Rican lineage of the likes of Trinidad, Cotto, Benitez, and Gomez, but that never happened. Obviously, in my opinion, he didn't look comfortable trying to box at all. He should have probably took a little longer before he went straight into the rematch, but that's another discussion. Then we have the panel, which consists of Paul Smith, former British champion, John Watson, lightweight contender, Richie Woodall, the ex-WBC 12 stone champion, and Jason Cook, former European champion. The first question is, who would they like to see Ricky Burns fight next? Paul Smith says Anthony Crolla. John Watson and Richie Woodall would like to see Kevin Mitchell. And Jason Cook says either Gavin Rees or Kevin Mitchell. The other question, is George Groves ready for a world title shot? Paul Smith, John Watson, and Jason Cook all think that he could beat Robert Stieglitz, the German, and Richie Woodall thinks he would do well too. My problem with him taking a world title shot is, and it's a problem that there's too much belts in the game. If you're not prepared to call out Andre Ward or Lucian Bute, why are you calling out the weakest link in the chain in Stieglitz, the WBO holder? I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to be another Chavez or Canelo where you're an apprentice champion learning on the job? No, we don't want world champions like that. If you are not ready to take on all comers, you're just not ready for a world title shot. Bottom line, really and truly. And the boxing fans knows what's what. I don't know why these governing bodies are trying to pull the wool over our eyes. All they have to do is come on YouTube one day and they'll see there's plenty of knowledgeable people who know the game. Old school, new school need to learn though. You know what I mean? Well, I don't see why they're doing this shit, but whatever. Now we go to the Your Say section, which is some boxing tweets and letters. We're going to start with the boxing tweets. I'm just going to read the tweets which I think are worth reading out. Joe Calzaghe, at Real Joe Calzaghe. He was impressed with Ricky Burns. And at Oscar De La Hoya, he says, after 10 months of sobriety, he has the clarity of mind to know that he will never box again. And I say that's a wise decision. We go into the letters, and we're going to start with the letter of the week, which is titled, New Weight Please by Alan Presswich. After the mismatch between Vladimir Klitschko and the dreadful Jean-Marc Mormek, Surely the time has come to introduce the super heavyweight class of, say, 15 stone plus. He goes on to lambast Mormek and throws Hayes' name in there and a few other heavyweights who have made inadequate challenges as a reason why it's a necessity to introduce this additional weight category. Well, I disagree with that. And I disagree with that because everything in life goes through an evolutionary stage, and heavyweight boxing is no different. Currently, we are witnessing an era of Eastern European heavyweights, mainly the Klitschko's, dominating the division. And most of the Eastern European heavyweights are quite big, like Robert Helenius, Klitschko, Valuev. But the thing is, we saw Derek Chisora beat Robert Helenius and get robbed out the decision. We saw David Haye and Ruslan Shagaev beat Valuev. So what does that really mean? I mean, Lamont Brewster beat Vladimir, and I see it like this. The next generation of heavyweights, they're going to come up seeing 6'5", 6'6" champions. And if they're 6'2", 6'3", all they're going to know is 6'5" and 6 foot champions. So all their training from amateur to professional will be geared to fighting bigger men. And they're bound to do better than the likes of Eddie Chambers, Calvin Brook, etc. They're bound to. I mean, Ray Austin was about 6'5", and he fought Vladimir Klitschko, and he was diving into the canvas. I don't think it's a matter of size. I think it's a matter of, it's just a bad batch of heavyweights challenging for the title. It's no more than that. They're not invincible. Klitschko's are not invincible. You know, even Floyd Mayweather is not invincible. There's some kid sitting down now who studied Floyd since he was a kid and studied other fighters and could beat Floyd. Because that's just how, there's always someone better. There's always someone better out there. But this kid might not even turn amateur or pro. He might even fuck with boxing. So we'll never know. But it is what it is, you know what I mean? Next letter. From Jim Kirkwood in Kilmarnock, Scotland. His letter is titled, Broner, So Childish. A boxer cannot sink no lower depths than ridiculing a stricken opponent. When Adrian Broner flattened Eloy Perez, his arrogance and childish prance across the ring was a disgrace. I was also surprised that no one in ringside made any comment, although at least boxing news writer Jack Hurst seemed unimpressed. I have several friends who in the past have been mildly interested in boxing, but the behavior of many boxers in recent times in and out of the ring has convinced them that the sport is populated by low-life scum and should be banned. I've got a lot of stuff to cover here, so I'm not going to attack that. I want to, but I'd rather my subscribers deal with that one, whether you agree or disagree. Tim Underhill, Boreham Wood. His letter is titled, Let's Stay Unified. A member of the audience at the Radio 5 live show to debate the future of boxing used the words a nest of vipers to describe the parties involved in putting on a professional boxing show. An exaggeration, but what was clear was the extent of the infighting between the sport's movers and shakers. When you have the foremost UK boxing promoter of the last 25 years, Frank Warren, at loggerheads with the sport's governing body, the British Boxing Board of Control, and Mike Costello, Radio 5 Live's excellent commentator, given the unenviable position of defending the BBC's lack of coverage of professional boxing. Seemingly under attack from all corners of the room, you have to be concerned about the ability of the sport to work together in harmony. They did seem to be consensus on one point, the increasing marginalisation of the sport, and the feeling that terrestrial television, in particular BBC television, has unfairly abandoned professional boxing. Unless the powers that be can adopt a unified approach, the events at York Hall did nothing to inspire confidence that the current position, whereby slowly but surely the mainstream fan base for boxing is being eroded, will ever be reversed. Some good points there, some very good points. John Scully from the USA. His letter is titled, Scully Clarifies. After reviewing Alan Cheadle's letter in Boxing News on the 8th of March concerning my recent piece on Mike Tyson and his place in history, I felt I needed to clarify a few things. I did not say that aside from Lennox Lewis, the Klitschkos and Muhammad Ali, that Mike would tear through the remains of history's heavyweight divisions. Rather than that, I said that the Tyson who tore through Larry Holmes, Burbeck, and Pinklon Thomas tears through the remainder of history's champions too. Rather than go through every single champion back to Jack Johnson and John L. Sullivan, I made a blanket statement implying that in most matchups that Mike would come out on top. In his letter, Mr. Cheadle states that Tyson does not tear through Dempsey, Lewis, and Marciano. Specifically to that end, I would say that each of those men were too small, too slow for a successful shot at Mike. It's just my opinion, and there is no way to say for sure what would happen, but I am fairly certain there is no 5'10", 185-pound man, as Marciano was, who could stand with the Mike Tyson of 1988. Now we go to the readers' poll, which you can find at www.boxingnewsonline.net. And the question posed today is Ricky Burns versus Kevin Mitchell. Who wins? And the poll reads, Burns by points, 63%. Mitchell by points, 20%. Burns by KO, 10%. And Mitchell by KO, 7%. And on Facebook.com Boxing News Online, Ryan Collins said it will be a great fight for the British fans. Burns wins by unanimous decision. Mitchell will test him though, but not enough to win. Kerry Larkin says, so hard to call. Mitchell has more power, but Burns is slick with a good tight defense. Jamie Savin says, a focused Mitchell is world class. This is a true 50-50 fight, with my gut leaning slightly towards Mitchell on points. While Miles Smith says Mitchell will win and would like to see the fight held at Upton Park. Now we have the 10 count. This is a feature about boxers who behave badly. Number 1 on the list, we have Carlos Monzon. The legendary middleweight lost only 3 times, but his temper would frequently defeat him, long before he wound up in jail for killing his wife. Number 2, Sonny Liston. Sonny learned how to box in prison, but his demons remained upon his release. 4 years after his 1953 debut, the future heavyweight champion was in jail again for assaulting a police officer. Number 3, Mike Tyson. Fame and money did little to soothe Mike Tyson's inner rage. With a multi-million-dollar 1992 showdown with Evander Holyfield sealed, Mike was removed from society for 3 years after being convicted of raping Desiree Washington. Number 4, Johnny Tapia. Cocaine, or as Johnny calls it, my mistress, has shoved the troubled Tapia off the straight and narrow several times. His most recent jail term was 2009, 2 years before his final contest. Number 5, Diego Corrales. Shortly after he lost to Floyd Mayweather in 2001, Corrales was sent to California State Prison after assaulting his pregnant wife. Upon his return, he produced his finest work, beating Yoel Casamaya, Acelino Freitas, and Jose Luis Castillo before his untimely death in 2009. Number 6, Tony Ayala Jr. Ayala's blood is laced with ferocity. It fueled a thrilling rage inside the ropes and outside them too. In the year of 1983, while Ayala was a scorching hot prospect, he was incarcerated for the crime of rape. Upon his release in 1999 at the age of 36, he embarked on a comeback. His skills severely eroded, he wisely walked away from the game. Number 7, Trevor Burbick. 6 years after showing Mike Tyson his spaghetti legs, Trevor was found guilty of raping a babysitter. In the year 1992, he returned to the ring, way beyond his best years. He retired again in the year 2000. His nephew bludgeoned him to death in the year of 2008. Number 8, Harry Simon. The gifted Namibian who won world titles at light welter and middle was found guilty of culpable homicide in 2005 after his driving resulted in 3 deaths. His meandering comeback is yet to find any real success. Number 9, Ricardo Williams Jr. This can't-miss prospect was woefully off aim when he found himself behind lock and key for 31 months on gun charges. Number 10, James Butler, was rightfully imprisoned after punching opponent Richard Grant after the final bell. The super middle's subsequent comeback was permanently curtailed by a 29-year-old jail term for murder. Now, the next feature we have here is called Hit or Miss. Number 1, hit. Orlando Salido. Old school warrior went back to Puerto Rico and again overturned the odds to defeat Juan Manuel Lopez in a great fight. Number 2, Ricky Burns. The Scot posted an impressive display and drew a good crowd at the Brayhead Arena on a big night. Number 3, Joe Gallagher. 3 consecutive first-round wins in 7 days for the trainer, courtesy of Stephen Smith, Hosea Burton, and Callum Johnson. Number 4, TV fight fans. Last week, UK fight fans had Burns versus Moses, Salido Lopez. This weekend, they have Martinez Macklin and Brook versus Hatton. That was all the hits. Now we go into the miss section. 4, David Barnes. An unfortunate ending to his comeback fight in Bolton, where it was curtailed by a cut from an accidental head clash. I think that was against Vivian Harris. Number 3, Stephen Orman, the Irish prospect, took a chance by taking on Paul Appleby in Scotland, and the gamble did not quite pay off. Number 2, Kenny Anderson. A long, hard training camp is over, but with Groves' withdrawal from the fight, there is no end product for the frustrated Scot. Number 1, the WBC. Their middleweight title should be on the line on Saturday, but they have given it to Chavez. So what is Martinez and Macklin actually for? Now we have the news and the news in brief. We have Amir Khan talking up his chances against Lamont Peterson in their up-and-coming bout, saying he'll leave nothing to chance and this and that and whatever. And we have Justin Duco still fighting. Unbelievable. He's 39 now. Okay. We also have the former WBC super featherweight champion, Vitaly Talbot, taking on European champion Hermano Fegatili. Juan Manuel Marquez takes on unbeaten Argentine Cesarine Caenza, who has just 1 knockout victory from 42 bouts. That's unbelievable. At the New Mexico City Arena on April the 14th. The WBO's interim light welterweight strap will be the prize for the winner. Unbeaten heavyweight prospect Manuel Char takes on Taras Bedinko in a 12-rounder for the WBC Silver International Souvenir. Oh, what kind of belt that, man? Blood clot, man. Manny Pacquiao. Philippine tax officials have filed a criminal complaint against Manny Pacquiao after the welterweight champion failed to submit documents to investigators who were looking into his tax returns. Prosecutors will now decide if there is enough evidence to bring the case to court. The 33-year-old could face up to 2 years in jail if convicted. According to the Associated Press Bureau of Internal Revenue Regional Director, Rosil Lazares, said a complaint was filed on March the 1st when Pacquiao failed to provide the documents despite 3 notices and a subpoena. Lazares added that Pacquiao's 2010 tax return contained discrepancies surrounding his many businesses and endorsements. Pacquiao was ranked the 24th richest athlete in the world last year by the Forbes magazine. Legendary rivals Sugar Ray Leonard and Thomas Hearns teamed up on Friday, March 9th at a Tustin, California charity event to raise money for Dick Marconi's Foundation for Kids Speech and Language Development Center. Tommy Hearns beat me in the second fight, Leonard told the audience about their 1989 rematch that was declared a draw, which was 8 years after Ray halted Hearns in round 14. Now you have to go around the country and say the same thing, Hearns retorted. Harry Sr., the former Southern Area heavyweight champion, who suffered a stroke while sparring in 2010, has been told by therapists that his speech will not improve any further. The physio that first treated Harry said to me a long time ago that he was lucky to survive the stroke at all and that he suffered severe brain damage. There has, however, been an improvement with his walking, and as usual, he seems pretty happy. Acelino Freitas makes a comeback on May the 19th against Michael Oliveira. Boy, Freitas could punch, boy. Wilfredo Vasquez Jr. is eyeing up a June the 16th return to the ring. And then he could possibly move up to featherweight to challenge WBO champion Orlando Salido later in the year. Former 12-stone WBC champion Mauro Galvano, who lost his title to Nigel Benn in 1992, has been sentenced to 6.5 years in jail by an Italian court for his involvement in gang-related crimes such as extortion. The Italian is now 48, is also a former European champion. Saul Alvarez has finished training in Guadalajara, Mexico, and will finish the preparations for his May the 5th showdown with Shane Mosley at Big Bear in California. Cruiserweight veteran Antonio Tarver, 43 years of age, has admitted he'd be willing to take on the Freddie Roach-trained Latif Coyote on May the 26th. Kenny Anderson sounded surprisingly calm while discussing George Groves' withdrawal from their British and Commonwealth title fight, which would have took place tonight. Anderson believes that Groves is spineless. Groves will more than likely challenge Robert Stieglitz in April for his WBO championship. This development is now possible as Mikael Kessler has pulled out of an April the 14th date against Stieglitz. Here's a few things you can check on BoxingNewsOnline.net. Sky commentator Nick Horlin has lost his voice ahead of the Kell-Brook-Matthew Hatton showdown. Then you have fantasy fights. American correspondent Jack Hirsch explains why Thomas Hearns would beat Sugar Ray Robinson. Then we have exclusives from Zab Judah, Paul McCloskey, light heavyweight rivals Tony Bellew and Danny McIntosh. Darren Barker has been forced to pull out of a fight with WBO middleweight champion Dmitry Pirog. Barker's about to have an operation on his hip. David Price, the Liverpool heavyweight, is talking up a potential fight with Derek Chisora, but that's only if he gets past Sam Sexton for the vacant British and Commonwealth titles. Mike Tyson is starring in a one-man Las Vegas show titled Mike Tyson, The Undisputed Truth, live on stage, with nightly performances from the 13th of April till the 18th at the Hollywood Theatre inside the same MGM Grand Hotel where Tyson fought many times. One day, me and my wife went to see the actor Chaz Palminteri, and he was doing a stand-up routine about his movie A Bronx Tale, about his life. This inspired Tyson to tell his wife, I could do that, baby. I could do that. I could do a similar thing when I'm in the UK and in Asia. In the UK, I interact with the audience, but I have to be a bit more restrictive and tidy up, just like Chaz is doing. Tyson will recount his tumultuous and compelling life in a show co-written by his wife Kiki, before doing dinner shows in Jersey and one in the UK in Stoke. He says he is accustomed to his new shade of limelight. I have stage fright until I'm in front of the cameras or on the stage, he concedes. The only time I'm afraid is when there's no stage because there's no rent. For updates on Mike, to download his app and purchase his signature t-shirts, go to www.miketyson.com for the UK shows. Call CWH Promotions on 01782 777 7724. Former WBO light heavyweight champion Julio Cesar Gonzalez died at the age of 35 on Saturday, March the 10th, after a drunk driver in a hit-and-run incident collided with his motorcycle, according to his family. Gonzalez did not receive any medical help for 90 minutes following the crash. Gonzalez defeated the likes of Glenn Johnson on points. He also defeated Dariusz Mikuchelski for his WBO light heavyweight belt. Mikuchelski was undefeated in 48 bouts at the time. Gonzalez lost widely on points to Roy Jones for Jones's world titles. The last significant bout I can remember Gonzalez in was when he was stopped by Tavoris Cloud for his WBC light heavyweight belt in 10 rounds. R.I.P. The fifth man to face Muhammad Ali as a professional, Donnie Fleeman, has died. Donnie came from Texas. He boxed as a light heavyweight also. He fought the likes of Roy Harris, Pete Radmaker, Ezra Charles, and Mike Holt. He retired in 1961 with a 35-12-1 record. 23 stoppages. He was 79. Now we're going to go through some upcoming fight previews. We're going to start with Matthew Macklin challenging Sergio Martinez for his belt. I say belt because I'm not sure on the situation of what's happened to his belt, really, his WBC belt. And the Boxing News has predicted Martinez to win on points on this one. But check out this dialogue between Martinez and Jose Sulaiman. I'm going to start from this particular chapter. Martinez became the linear champion by outpointing Kelly Pavlik, who had beaten Jermaine Taylor, who had beaten undisputed champion Bernard Hopkins. Pavlik, however, had been broken to some extent when Hopkins had toyed with him in an over-the-weight match. It was the Williams fight, a dramatic moment of revenge after Paul had won an arguable majority decision over him in December 2009. This catapulted Martinez into fame. Since then, he had to put up with the political maneuvering of the increasing odious World Boxing Council, which has cost him his official world title. The WBC installed Sebastian Sibic as the number one contender. Martinez was elevated to hold the pointless diamond belt, which was supposedly intended only as a services to boxing type of award in recognition of a great career. And Sibic was matched for the vacant world title against the WBC's favorite, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. Martinez would have defended the WBC belt against Chavez, but Chavez's promoter, Bob Arum, still says his man is not ready for Sergio. So we have a ludicrous situation where the approved WBC, quote-unquote, middleweight champion of the world is neither good enough nor experienced enough to box another middleweight. Instead of meeting each other, Chavez outpointed Marco Antonio Rubio last month and will box again in June, perhaps against Martin Murray. And in the meantime, Martinez defends against Macklin. Martinez has said he is no longer interested in his diamond belt, following his outrage at WBC head Jose Sulaiman's ridiculous, wrong-headed statement about wife beating in the wake of Floyd Mayweather's domestic violence case. Mayweather faces a jail sentence, and Sulaiman said that in his view, violence against women was not a major crime. He was forced to retract this statement, pleading English as a second language, following an adverse reaction from, amongst others, Martinez, who spends his own time in an anti-bullying campaign and working to eradicate domestic violence by taking part in radio shows and visiting women's centers. However, Sulaiman wouldn't drop the matter. He accused Martinez of being ungrateful and disloyal for blasting the WBC with his uncontrollable mouth. And so, just as we are not sure what Barker would have won if he had upset Martinez in October, if Macklin wins, he'll have to be content with being recognized as the number one middleweight in the world, the linear champion, and not worry about a belt. It would be then up to Macklin and Lou DiBella, Macklin's promoter, to make enough noise, repeatedly declaring him the middleweight champion of the world, that they might be able to exploit the chaos and hopefully help cure the situation. The Boxing News has question marks over Kell Brook's stamina, but still tipped Brook to win a unanimous decision against Matthew Hatton. I'm tipping Brook to stop Hatton, to be honest with you, in style. I mean, Hatton's lost to the likes of Craig Watson, who I think might have beat Amir Khan as an amateur, but still, man, come on. There's no form there. Haven't seen no particular skills from Hatton to say that he can do it. He takes quite a good shot, but the way I see it, if you get hit with too many of them, the referee's going to have to jump in and stop that. Commonwealth Super Bantamweight champion Carl Frampton defends his titles against Ghanaian Prosper Ankara, and he's tipped by the Boxing News to win in 6 rounds or so and defend his Commonwealth title. I want to say this because I believe Frampton is managed by Barry McGuigan. I just want to say this about Barry McGuigan because he criticizes a lot of fighters. He does. He really does. But I remember when I was a youth. And McGuigan ceremoniously done whatever he could to duck Azuma Nelson. I mean, Nelson would come on the TV and call McGuigan a girl. Say, why doesn't he fight me? And McGuigan would never say nothing. Who is up to Mr. Eastwood, my promoter? He was like the fucking Irish Manny Pacquiao. But just not as good. You know what I mean? And since I keep hearing how brilliant Frampton is, well, why doesn't he fight Rendell Monroe? Rendell is ranked #1 in Britain. I don't get it. Talking about challenging for world titles, but you won't fight the top man in Britain. I don't get it. And when's this tournament going to happen with Scott Quigg, Rendell Monroe, Carl Frampton, and Jason Booth? When's that going to happen? Never. That's when. You know what I mean? You're going to try and find one of the weakened wildebeests out of the herd. That's my analogy for world title holders. And you're going to pick him off and beat him and have a big celebration that you're a world champion. I can see it. I can see it coming now. You're going to do a George Groves. You're going to do a Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. You're going to do a Canelo. I can see it. Now let's cover a little fight action around the globe. We already know about Orlando Salido defeating Juan Ma. We all know about that. It's been spoken about to the hills. But I thought Mikey Garcia looked kind of good when he beat Concepcion. He looked kind of good still. He was well composed. He placed his punches nicely. And Robert Garcia will make sure he has a correct strategy if he ever has to fight Salido. I have no doubt about that. Whether he can beat Salido, that I don't know, because I prefer boxers to sluggers, but Salido is a razor blade right now, and sometimes, you know what I mean, it's just a matter of pressure burst pipes. So we'll have to see how that one goes. In Australia, Daniel Gill retained his IBF middleweight strap against Osamana Adama from Ghana over 12 rounds. And Billy Dibb retained his featherweight championship for the same organization against Eduard Escobedo, who he stopped after 6 rounds. Escobedo decided to sit it out on his stool and didn't come out for the 7th round. In Novi, Michigan, United States, Andy Lee made quick work of Saul Duran at the Suburban Collection Showplace. Ireland's Detroit-based middleweight scored regularly with accurate headshots and poisonous body attacks. The 27-year-old looked impressive. As he landed a telling right hook in the 2nd round, Duran unable to recover from the punch and the fight was stopped. Well, I'm not surprised. I mean, Duran is 39 years old and his record is 40, 20 losses and 2 draws. You know, not really sterling stuff, in my opinion anyway, for someone who they're talking about fighting for world titles. I'm not getting how he's fighting opponents like that. You know what I mean? It's not like he's got a record like that and he's a Emmanuel Gustus or something like that. These guys are bums. 2 European title fights to report. Kiko La Sensation Martinez successfully defended his European bantamweight crown against Arsene Martirosyan inside the Palais des Sports de Guerlain. I remember when Kiko Martinez came to the UK and he had a fearsome reputation as a puncher. He won a lot of fights in 1 round. Didn't he knock out Bernard Dunn in a round? And then he fought Wendell Monroe and Rendell beat him. That was a good win by Rendell. Anyway, Kiko won this latest defense by a 12-round points decision. Then in Spain, we had Silvio Ortino secured a contentious split decision against Valery Yanchi to claim the vacant European flyweight strap. There's a questions and answers feature on Shane McPhilbin, who upset Leon Williams by taking his cruiserweight title with a dramatic 12-round stoppage. He defends his belt against Enzo Macronelli next week in Wolverhampton. Now we come to the big feature, and it's all about James Kirkland. The article is titled The $5 Kid. And I'm going to read the whole of it. I've decided it's that good. I'm going to read the whole of it. At 6 years of age, He wanted $5 and a way out. At 10, he became obsessed with bigger things, such as trophies. The bigger the better. Now, at age 27, James Kirkland has only eyes for the world light middleweight title. Born in East Austin, Texas, the Mandingo Warriors hustle in pursuit of money, silverware, and opportunities led him into reluctant sightseeing, unfortunately, at Fairway Apartments at County Park, which is obviously jail. I came from nothing, man, he says with a heavy sigh. In order to survive in the projects, you wouldn't think twice about robbing, stealing, or borrowing without ever giving back. You had to learn to survive without money. The only thing of more value than money is hope. And hope was short on the ground in the streets of East Austin, greeted by crack houses and crime scenes on every corner. Kirkland sought solace in innocent games like hide and seek, and at times he hoped that it'd never be found. It was while throwing rocks at neighbors' houses, however, that James witnessed a shred of hope amongst the shattered glass. Even at the age of 6, Kirkland threw harder and further than most of his older peers, a feat that would alert both the neighbors and authorities to his prowess, and a white-haired boxing coach. This guy pulled up on us one day as we reached a dead end in the road. I panicked, and at the time I thought, shit, maybe we just smashed one of his windows. But he walked up on us and said, "Hey, nice arm. Do you know how to box?" I shook my head. I knew how to fight, but I didn't know how to box. They were two different worlds to me. Still, he offered me $5 to fight this one guy. I thought about it for a split second before turning to him and saying, "Yeah, man, show me the money." I hopped in the van with him, and we drove to the Montopolis Recreation Center. The man's name was Donald Pops Billingsley, and backed only by his street smarts, Kirkland didn't think twice about jumping into the stranger's vehicle. Instead, he embraced the adventure, a chance to pocket $5 and do something exciting. It beat throwing rocks at glass windows for the rest of the afternoon, that's for sure. I'd been to the recreation center hundreds of times before, but never knew there was a back room that they never opened up, he continued. There was tape spread all across the window. You could never actually see inside it. When Pops opened the door, I was like, oh shit, this is a boxing gym. I'd never actually seen one before, and suddenly my world made sense. Pops said, "I want you to fight this kid over there," and it was on. I didn't have a clue what I was supposed to be doing. I even tried putting the cup protector on my head to wear as a head guard. All the other kids were laughing their asses off. Anyway, that kid beat my ass from bell to bell. He bust my nose and trod on my toes. Still proud as hell, I said, "Give me another $5 and I promise you tomorrow I'll whip that kid's butt." Pops took me to one side and said, "Sorry, son, but you got your ass kicked today. I don't pay kids $5 to get their asses kicked. If you want to come back to the gym tomorrow and learn how to fight, you're more than welcome." I told him I knew how to fight, but I didn't know how to deal with all that moving around and shaking about that the other kid was doing. Pop said if I come back the next day, he'd teach me how to move and shake and all of that. And after that, I never missed a beat. As a kid on the street, the best feeling in the world was to hit somebody and make them cry and make them bleed. The boxing gym offered me the chance to do all of that and not get in trouble for it. Ironically, the more fighting Kirkland did in the gym, the less he did outside it too. Life is all about environment and influences. And if you're walking around in a negative environment, the only thing you'll pick up is negativity. He said, I did that for a while, and I knew where it was taking me. You become blind to the fact that stuff you're doing is actually wrong, simply because you don't know any better. You'll do something illegal and then shrug afterwards as to say, well, my mom does this, my family does this, everybody I know does this. The boxing gym was a totally positive environment for me, and many others. Without boxing, you would have never heard me say yes, sir, or no, sir, in front of an adult. In time, the street fighter would learn to box. A gradual transition that culminated in Kirkland amassing 134 wins from 146 amateur contests. In addition to that, he won 4 consecutive Silver Glove championships. Scrappy and primal, Kirkland never cut the role as an archetypal amateur boxer. But he does say those days in the vest and headguard were some of the happiest, some of the purest of his turbulent life. As a kid, we didn't even know you could make money from boxing. That was never in my mind. I wanted to win the biggest trophy I could get my hands on. I wanted it to be bigger than the trophies all the other kids had. If one kid had a big trophy, I'd want a bigger one. If one kid won 3 trophies, I'd want to win 4. That was all it was about, boxing. Pure and simple. It was just for the trophies. The trophies stopped in 2001. That was the year Kirkland decided to call time on his Olympic dream and decided to turn pro and punt for pay. It didn't take him long to make the adjustments either, competing predominantly in Texas and then later California. The aggressive American southpaw chalked up 27 consecutive victories in the professional ranks, scoring standout wins over the likes of Yoel Julio, Brian Vera, Ozzy Duran, and Aaron Masali Albert. Kirkland's feral approach to prize fighting was one developed by Pops and then further encouraged by Ann Wolfe. Perhaps the only fighter in Texas with a comparable snarl and thirst for flesh. Wolfe held 4 world titles in 4 separate weight divisions, and pivotally, in the interest of this story, she held Kirkland's attention and his respect in her trouser pockets. Ann came up the same way I did, from absolutely nothing. To see her go and win 8 world titles is all the motivation and inspiration that I'll ever need. If you're ever lucky enough to train with Ann Wolfe, you'll realize she's just something else. She'll be out there running harder, faster, and earlier than you ever will. And you'll be looking up ahead thinking, shit, a woman ain't supposed to be out here in the cold, running like this at 6 in the morning. Ann really goes to the next level. She makes a point of showing me whatever it is I'm going through, she can do it as well. We go to the same uncomfort zone together on a daily basis, and not many coaches are willing to do that with their pupils. The confrontational nature of both teacher and student is a communion that was never likely one to be free from obstacles. Indeed, Kirkland, who was on parole for an armed robbery conviction in 2003, was again arrested in 2009 for possession of a firearm. He was sentenced to 24 months in prison, during which time he fell out with Wolfe. He waved goodbye to a plethora of sycophants and watched his stock plummet from an undefeated pro boxer to a convict in a jumpsuit. Going to jail allowed me a lot of time and space for introspection, to really figure out who was going to stick around when the chips were down. I saw my so-called friends and family disappear. And that's no exaggeration. They literally disappeared on the very day I was incarcerated. They wouldn't answer their phones, wouldn't visit, and wouldn't write to me, says Kirkland, the father of 3. I tried contacting a few of them, not for money, but to simply say farewell and wish them good health. And yet nobody wanted to know. That screwed me up mentally for a while. When I came out, nobody was there to greet me. Nobody was there to welcome me back. I was back to being an anonymous kid from the projects, trying to figure out ways to make money again. When released, Kirkland listened to the feeble excuses of those who flaked on him, and then he moved to Las Vegas to train with Kenny Adams. Upon his return, he won his first 2, before running into the supposedly soft-punching Nobuhiro Ashida, a Japanese veteran with just 8 knockouts from 22 wins to his name. Despite assured safety, however, Kirkland was dropped 3 times and stopped in the very first round. His undefeated record snapped in a matter of minutes. I'm still annoyed that the referee stopped the fight. I just don't like the double standards in boxing sometimes. I've seen fighters with no teeth or eyeballs, broken jaws and cheekbones, split lips and ears being allowed to carry on in fights, and yet I was stopped because I took a big shot early and I was trying to recover. The referee got soft in there, man. He panicked and didn't realize where I come from and the kind of heart I possess. Stuff happens in a fight. Far worse than what happened to me against Ashida. But what first seemed to be a freak occurrence soon revealed itself to be an inevitable conclusion of a torrid training camp. A training camp that was dictated by Kirkland rather than his coaches, and crucially a training camp that lacked an all-important female voice, an all-important bark and an all-important influence. Hard work pays off, and anything less than that, you're going to get knocked out, said Kirkland. I don't care what supplements you take or what fancy equipment you use in the gym. If you're not working hard at the foundations, your ass is on borrowed time. I didn't do the right things in training for the Ashida fight, and it played out inside the ring. Coaches can teach all they want, but if you're not being pushed to get your ass in shape, then the whole structure falls in on itself. Kirkland gets back in contact with Wolf, not long after the loss. He moves back to Austin, and 2 months later, he's back in action. He dusted off Dennis Sharp inside 1 round, and then a month later, he blasted out Dennis Hieros in 2. Then he gets his big opportunity. A fight that's going to be showcased on HBO. An eliminator for the WBC world title against Alfredo Angulo. I like Angulo a lot. He's my type of fighter. A dude that gets in there and looks to scrap when the chips are down. He finds a way somehow to keep on fighting. I knew I was up against it when I stepped in the ring with him. Everybody on the internet was telling me I was going to lose. But I kept the faith, and I knew that so long as I maintained my discipline and listened to Ann, I'd be able to weather the storm and see sunlight at the end of it all. And that's what happened. I outlasted the Warrior, which is something many have tried and failed to do in the past. Astonishingly, Kirkland rallied from an early knockdown to drop Angulo in the same round. Not only was the fight a clear highlight of 2011, but the course the bout took proved testament to Kirkland's renewed hunger, his renewed vigor for both boxing and indeed life. I trained harder than ever for that fight, he said. That was the ultimate version of me. I don't care who was put in the ring with me that night. I was going to get the victory. I could have been knocked down 4 or 5 times, but I can promise you I would have still got up and grabbed that win in the end. I had complete faith in my preparation. No fighter could have been fitter or tougher than Ann and I were that night. I just had a quick look through the fight guide, and it looks like Kendall Hall is fighting Tim Coleman tonight, so I'll have to look out for the result of that one later on. The last article is the flashback. This is the week in 1958. Just 2 weeks before his challenge to world featherweight champion Hogan Kid Bassi in Los Angeles, Ricardo Moreno received some good news. In our Around the Globe column, we reported Moreno's suspension had been lifted by the Mexican board. It is said that his reported cafe brawl was a rumor circulated by the promoters, who wanted to stage the bout in Mexico. An attendance of 27,000 was expected, paying a gate of £107,142. Too much amateur boxing on television. That was the problem in 1958, according to Ron Olver in his Telefight news column. Ron Olver wrote that at a recent London ABA meeting, a letter was submitted from the South East Division, deploring the standard of boxing exhibited by the teams in recent international television bouts from Scotland and Wales. The letter was referred to the ABA. If official complaints are being received about the standard of international events from Scotland, surely this proves my point about the standard of boxing in the preliminaries in the Scottish Championships. It would be wise to keep these off the screens in the future. Our leading article on page 6 asks the question, where are the punches? It asked, have British boxers developed stronger chins? Or have they lost the knack of placing a good punch accurately and solidly on the chin? We pose these questions because knockout victories are as rare these days as horse and carts are on the roads. The unnamed lead writer tried to answer his own query, offering the theory that a big percentage of fighters do not and cannot punch correctly. Also apparent is the fact that referees no longer allow boxers to get in such dire straits where any blow, however weak, can put a man down for 10 seconds or more. So that's about it for this week with the Boxing News Review. So this is Boxing Beats and Rhymes saying Peace out.